In this video, we want to go through and start fixing some miscellaneous bugs related to shooting before we actually go and get into, I don't really want to call it a refactor, but a slight change in kind of how logic will be handled. Um, anyways, first bug, if we play with a listen server and one client. So let's go ahead and hit play. So here is the server. You can see the server over here is performing the actual, you can see the slide cycling and such. Reciprocating, but the client can't see it. So he's watching it, but the slide never actually comes back. And then as the client, you can see both the server and client can see it. And then lastly, really quick, if I play with two clients, you can see both of them see it as well. So pretty much it is the listen server that is not actually replicating down to the clients. So you can see here, wait, I was shooting as a client. Here I am as the server. If I just hold the left mouse button, nothing happens client side. So the reason for that is actually in the ability. So if we head over to our activate ability, we are doing a check. If we are locally controlled, we simply call fire, which runs our fire logic. We're never actually calling the press trigger function, which we are here. So what we want to do is we want to cut and paste the press trigger at the top of activate ability because we want this to happen both if we are locally controlled and if we are the server. So regardless, that way we know that everything actually will replicate. So let's go ahead and run our live coding and we will view into issue number 2 that actually stems from this change. So once that's done, let's give it one more test. So here's the server. I can shoot, and you can see it actually is animating over here on the client. And likewise, the client works the same as well. So let's talk about that issue. So if I hit play, it's going to be very hard to see because it actually happens in one frame. But basically, what's going on is we're calling press trigger. This is going to increment the trigger count and trigger the on rep for the trigger count, which calls fire. And fire calls perform bullet trace, which, performs the trace and all that stuff. And if we view the ability, we are calling fire in the ability, which also happens to call perform bullet trace. So we're calling perform bullet trace twice. And we can actually confirm this by just printing out a log at the top here, and I'll just call it perform bullet trace. So let's go ahead and run our live coding and confirm. Okay, once that build is done, we can hit play again, and I'm going to just simply left click once. And you can see we have perform bullet trace, then the ability fire function, and then perform bullet trace again. So what we want to do is we want to replicate basically the press and release trigger to everybody but ourselves. Now, when we call press trigger, because we are pressing this locally, we don't want to fire the on rep. We want the on rep to be fired for basically, if we're the local client and not the server, we want it to fire for the server. If we are the server and the local client, we don't want to fire this at all. So we're basically going to do this in a check. So if get owner, we can get the instigating controller. What's it called? How do you spell instigating? Get instigator controller. And if this controller is a local controller, we do nothing. So basically we want to check if we are not the local controller, then we fire the on rep. So let's copy this and do the same thing inside of release trigger. So let's run our live coding and give it another try. Okay, once that is done, let's go ahead and press play and fire one shot again. And there we go. So we have our fire function in the ability and a single call to perform bullet trace. So that's good to go there. Next up, let's play with two clients again. So we'll have the listen server. Whoops. So here's the listen server. I'm just going to empty my magazine and reload. So you can see on both, it is the empty reload. And then if I don't empty the magazine, we have a normal reload. However, if I shoot as the client, so I'll just do a normal reload, that's working fine. And if I empty the magazine and then reload, you can see on the client, I'm doing a normal reload. I did not do the empty reload. So that's a very simple fix. If we head down here to our reload function, we are setting B as empty only if we are the authority. However, remember, reload actually gets called from the ability on the local client as well. So we need to tell the local client that, hey, we are empty because we are passing in that, value. So we take this and paste it in the top because we want to set B as empty regardless of if we are the authority. So let's go ahead and run live coding and confirm that this is resolved. Okay, once the build has been completed, I'm actually going to move this guy out here. So now that we've built, let's give it another try. So as the client, I do a normal reload. So that's fine. And now I empty the magazine. And you can see we are now doing a empty reload. So the slide actually was locked to the rear. So that resolves that issue. Now I'm trying to think if there was any more. Let me check. Okay, I just remembered there was one when it came down to semi-auto. So in onRep trigger count, let's comment out our full auto timer. Let's go to our gameplay ability _ fire. And in the fire function, we want to change if true to false. So this way we are not in full auto. So this will we're basically going to be pretending that we're in semi-auto. So let's go ahead and give this a quick example as to what the issue is. And basically it's just a replication one, long story short. So as the server, remember we have 7 rounds in the magazine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see the 7th shot never actually fired on the client, but it did the server. And if I play as the server, play as the client, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can see all shots occurred on both client and server. Then if I play as client for both, we're going to see a very similar result to the server shooting. So on the client, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on the 7th shot, watch the client one on the right, 7. It never actually fires. So the reason for that is if we go to the gameplay ability fire and head down here, basically what's happening is because we are doing our check right here of if the current magazine ammo is less than or equal to 0, we are basically ending the ability pretty much right when we actually have, sent off the shot. We've started the ability. So this is, great for full auto. However, for semi-auto, on that last round, we're pretty much calling the press trigger. And then because we're ending the ability, we're calling release trigger, almost immediately. So we're not actually really getting a change in the actual, our trigger count struct. So what we want to do is we want to have a tracker in here of if we're in full auto. So basically, if we are in full auto, which in this case is false, and our current magazine ammo is less than or equal to 0, then we end the ability. So if we are in semi-auto, this logic here should never run. So once again, let's run our live coding and give it a try. Okay, now that that is done, let's go ahead and hit play and give it a try. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the 7th shot was received. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it was received on both clients. And that's pretty much what we were wanting. So that resolves quite a few issues. So now I'm just going to go ahead and actually remove these logs because I am kind of tired of them spamming. So remove there, and we will re-enable full auto. So uncomment the timer, set if false to true. And likewise, down here in the handle target data, we're going to change the false to true as well. So at some point, this will actually be replaced with a true or false as to whether or not we are in full auto. But anyways, I just wanted to go ahead and get those bugs resolved so that way we can move forward in an easier manner. So that's going to wrap this video up. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below where you can get early access to this entire series.